Okay, it's me, Geordie Pete Redding on Hollywood Balls, and the first of a new series, which is my favourite 90 minutes, where we're going to speak to legends of the game and just sort of recap. But from our perspective, they've done the interviews after the game, and we know all that. We know who scored, but we want to get inside it and what was happening, so from a fan's perspective. So my next guest was captain of Fulham the day at Old Trafford, and he saw his Fulham side's first win at Old Trafford in 40 years. It's my favourite 90 minutes with our very good friend, Lee Clark.
Hi, Pete. How are we doing?
We're doing very well. Now, before we get into that, just a quick recap. It's been a while since we've seen you. What have you been busy with currently?
Well, obviously, being out the game in terms of the management side and just reassessing. And I'm looking into a role at a local non-league club here in terms of Newcastle Blue Star, where I've got the title of director of football, which basically means is overseeing majority of things in the football club, i.e. the academy from the youngest boys and girls under fives all the way up to the under 23s. If there's anything I can help with in the first team setup in terms of sponsorship, with their kit or their tracksuits or whatever, just general sponsorship. That type of stuff, because under the management of Kenny Wharton, they've done very well before COVID. We're top of the league, so the chairman and the committee are very ambitious in the process of developing the ground. It's going to have a terrific 500-seater stand with hospitality for 300 people, brand new changing rooms, manager's office, physio's room, obviously referees changing facilities, lots of hospitality, other hospitality areas around the ground. And obviously we've got plans in which have been passed, and we just need to start work on a brand new 4G full-size floodlit training area. So, and on top of that, we've already got the Bobby Robson Lounge, which is a great area to have for the kids and the parents to come. And so, and they have terrific ambitions. They want to take the club as far as they can, and that means trying to get into the Football League, like what South Shields are on the verge of doing up here in the northeast. Unfortunately, they got stopped in their tracks by COVID, but I'm sure they'll continue to be strong. And everyone looks at what Salford done. I mean, we know they have very wealthy owners, but it just shows you where a club can go from and can end up if the people at the top. I mean, favourite saying is actions speak louder than words, and currently the chairman and committee of Newcastle Blue Star, their actions are very, very positive. They're trying to put something back in the community in the area that they're from in Newcastle. And on top of that, we have the old retro Newcastle United strips. We've got the black and white home kit, obviously, with the Newcastle Blue Star on, and we have the silver away kit from the early 80s. With the Blue Star on there and the third kit in the blue. So it's exciting. It's something I've always fancied doing, overseeing things. I've had to do that as a manager, not that I wanted to at certain clubs, because I've had to basically control everything.
Yeah.
So I understand what's required.
Great stuff. Well, we wish you all the best. We'll definitely be keeping our tabs on what's going on there. Sounds like a cracking role. We are going to take you back to the 90s and your favourite 90 minutes. And you've chosen a real corker. And I've watched the game at length so that I can question you on it. But it is in the 90s. And it's you were captain of Fulham that day. Just going to set the scene. And you were going to Old Trafford. And as I said in your introduction, 40 years, first win in 40 years at Old Trafford. But you had quite what a side Fulham had. They had some real quality in it, didn't they?
Oh, what a terrific side. I mean, in as you talked about, the insight into the game was we were following on from a midweek game against Newcastle, where we were 2-0 up. Myself and Louis Sahard scored against Newcastle, and Alan Shearer inspired Newcastle in the second half, and they ended up beating us 3-2. So we'd come off a performance that was good, that was strong, but when you get beat in a home game, when you're 2-0 up in the Premier League or at any level, you're disappointed. So we obviously had that disappointment, and then we had the daunting task that our next game was at Old Trafford. So everyone's thinking, well, that's a loss, so there's going to be 2 losses on the bounce. And you don't want to go on a run of defeats in the Premier League. So we obviously had to go into the game. We were confident because, as I said, we played particularly well against Newcastle, but we just give away the lead, which you never want to do. And so we went to Old Trafford, and obviously we got the perfect start. when Steve Malbronk won the ball and Steve went down the line on down the right hand side and crossed it, and I got in at the near post and put us one up.
And that was literally in the 3rd minute. But so to set the scene, in the changing room beforehand, I mean, if you can share with us, I mean, Chris Coleman was a manager at the time. What was Cookie's instructions and game plan? Was it just sort of trying to go out and keep it tight?
Well, obviously, when you go to Old Trafford, you know you're going to come under the cosh and you know you're going to have long spells without the ball. But we had, like you said, we had many talented attacking players. Zaha was playing particularly well, and actually his performance in this game, I'm sure, was one of the main factors that he's getting the mega move to Man United, because he was outstanding. Malbronk was playing well. Inamoto was having his best spell in the team. So, and we were strong. We had Edwin van der Sar in goal as well. So, you know, the manager, you know, we didn't want to restrict us. We knew we'd have spells without the ball, and we had to be strong defensively and have a good organisation. But when we got the ball, he wanted us to express ourselves. And certainly when you go 1-up early in the game, you've got something to not just hang on to, but something to go with. And it gives you a lift as well, because we did start the game particularly well. You know, the actual end result and the performance meant that it wasn't a fluke result. It was a result that we deserved. And so, as we said, we kept the ball well. We attacked with purpose. We scored 3, but we created many more chances. And when we did get breached, our back line and obviously our goalkeeper, who was world class, you know, kept them at bay.
I mean, yeah, they got back into it, and Forlan scored quite a great finish, actually. But I mean, how much of that a blow is it to the team at half time, when you sort of probably maybe got one eye thinking, yeah, if we just get in with this 1-0 and see what the gaffer has to say at half time. So it's a body blow, isn't it? Right on half time.
It is, but that shows why the result was even better, because we got pegged back and it was 1-1. It wasn't as if we went 2 up and 3 up. So they pegged us back, and usually when that happens at Old Trafford, certainly during our era, they go on to win the game. But we got another foothold in it, and we, you know, as we said, we're even better in the second half. We scored 2 terrific goals. We created more chances as well, and we soaked up the pressure that we had to. But when we had the ball, we made really good use of it. You know, we didn't waste many passes. We created opportunities. We broke forward. You know, we didn't give the ball away cheaply. When you play one of the big boys, one of the things is, if you know you're not going to have a lot of the ball when you do get it, you've got to do something with it, and you can't give it away cheaply back to them, because they'll just keep coming on and hurt you. And we didn't do that. When we got the chance to, in one possession, we got the chance to play. We kept the ball, and you know, we created chances. So we were always a threat, and so all those different aspects. Not the fact that obviously we went ahead, which lifted us early in the game, but we got pegged back. And as I said, usually that means only one outcome, and that's usually a win for Man United. But we didn't. We bounced back. We kept our composure, stuck to the game plan, and you know, got a terrific result.
Was that the message then at half time, Lee, that, you know, stick to the game plan, because surely the gaffer could see what was happening? You know, Fulham at that time, I always remember they were neat and tidy, and they very rarely lost the ball. And again, because you had that quality, you had the players that could shift the ball around. So was it sort of like go again at half time? Was that the message?
Of course, because we were very, you know, confident after our first half performance. We knew we'd done well in all aspects of the game, in possession and out of possession. You know, we'd had a setback, but it wasn't. We couldn't let that setback derail us, and we didn't. You know, it was a positive. You know, dressing room. The manager was positive. His messages to us was to stay positive, and so we went out in the second half, and we just, if nothing else, probably played better than we did in the first half.
Yeah, and that was the thing that all Man United fans probably, you know, at that time would have been thinking, it's okay, we're back in the game, we can do this. But it certainly wasn't on Fulham's agenda. That goal from 66 minutes, which was from Malbranque. I know you mentioned Louis Saha, but Malbranque was leading. Well, he was leading the plaudits for the man of the match. Was he yours?
he was very close. I mean, at that time, he was in sensational form. He was a terrific little player, Steed, in terms of making and scoring goals. And he was really good that day. I think most of us had probably one of our best games that day, because you can't go to Old Trafford and carry passengers. But Steed obviously was in a rich vein of form in any way, and on a consistent basis at that period. And was creating numerous chances, not just for himself but for the team as well. So, and he was for a wide player or midfield player, whatever you wanted to pigeonhole him as, he had a great finish on him. He was a very composed finisher when he got in there, and he took his goal well, and that obviously gave us the lift again.
And you talk about Man United of that time. I mean, there was a certain Cristiano Ronaldo playing that day. It seemed from the footage he cut a very quiet figure. Was he identified as a special threat? Do you think he was snuffed out, or did he have an off day?
Probably a little combination of all those things. Of course he was identified as a threat. He was then one of the best players in the Premier League, and he's gone on to become even better and better. And that just sums up the type of player you're up against. But I think it was a combination of us doing a great job on him, our defenders, nullifying his qualities. The one thing was you wanted to stop the ball getting to him. That's the thing. So you stop at its source, so he doesn't get a lot of possession, because if he gets a lot of possession, he's going to hurt you. And then obviously he probably hasn't had one of these 10 out of 10 games. He might have just been an 8, and an 8 out of 10 for Ronaldo is an average game. So, I think it was a combination of all those things. We knew if he gets ahead of steam, but there was other special players in that team and in that squad. They had world-class players all over, in terms of the qualities they had. So that puts it into perspective, the result and the performance.
Speaking of quality, my favourite goal of the game, sorry mate, and it's not yours, was the third. It was quite the finish from Inamoto. When he scored and that hit the back of the net, did you think, yeah, that's it, that's the 3 points? Or was that little thought of, it's still Man United, they could still always eke a result, still in the back of your mind?
No, because as I just opened the show with, we just give a 2-goal lead away in our previous game. That was inspired by a world-class player in Shearer. So we knew that they had many world-class players in their team. So until the final whistle goes, in a Premier League game, you never think that's it. If you start thinking that way during the game as a player, you'll become unstuck, because the teams have so much quality and ability. And the Man United, one of the stamps of Sir Alex Ferguson's reign at Manchester United was the never giving up the Fergie time, scoring goals in the 93rd, 94th, 95th minute. So we knew that even at that time in the game and the scoreline the way it was, we were going to face an onslaught for the final period. We were going to become under pressure. So we had to be organised. We had to stay strong as a group. And we've done that, and we've seen the game out.
You did indeed. I've got to ask you, was there any reaction from the Man United players or even Sir Alex post-match? Because obviously the players, you come off together, and sometimes, you're together in the stadium after the game, maybe in one of the lounges. Did you bump into Sir Alex at all?
We obviously bumped into Sir Alex and his staff and their players coming off the pitch, where, there's acknowledgement between and respect. This is no matter what the result is, respect between both benches, i.e. both managers and coaching staff, but also both sets of players. When you're used to winning like Man United and you demand high standards, I've got no doubt they would have been disappointed, angry and frustrated by that result. But they respected us enough to congratulate us and shake our hands after the game, which is the norm. There was nothing, untoward going on, which we didn't expect. They were a class act, not just as players, but also as people, as I got to know them over the years. And so that it was, that was important for us. But we knew that they would be disappointed, because their demands at that football club are so huge. And they were that during that era as well, because they were just the dominant team in English football at the time. Now,
well documented is your time in London and Fulham. I mean, you've said to me before as well, you absolutely loved your time in London. Sum up what it meant to be a Fulham player at that time.
Ah, it was fantastic. The place was continuing on the up from the day I got in there. That when I talked about, having ambition, there was no more ambitious owner than who we had in Mohammed Al Fayed. He wanted the club, he took over the club, and he wanted them to be competing in Europe. He achieved that goal. It was strong in the Premier League. The infrastructure, the football club was being improved all the time. We had a state-of-the-art training facility. The ground was obviously a difficult one to reconstruct because of the picturesque area that it was in, and right on the Thames. He tried many options to do that, but obviously he only had to do a bit of a tidying up thing because of restrictions and the building process at the time. It was a brilliant place to be. They treated our families fantastically well. We had a lovely time in London. The schools where the children went to. Everything about the club was geared to the team doing well, and that was the most important thing to everybody. And the people who worked behind the scenes were brilliant people. Just a real special time in my career, and a special time for the family, because we loved it down there, which I never ever thought, to be honest, Pete, I never thought I'd be. I was a home bird in Geordie, and I never thought I'd be any time in my life living in big old London. But thankfully it happened, because it was brilliant for us.
And it comes over in your book, as if by magic, on display. Good read, available at all top bookshops.
It'd probably be discounted now as well.
But it is a great read, and that there's some great stories about your time at Fulham and obviously elsewhere. As a manager, though, and it differs between a player, and what would it like to go back to Fulham as a manager, do you think, now?
Well, for me to have the opportunity to manage either Fulham or Newcastle or both would be the dream. It's the reason why I went into management and coaching. I've managed against them. I went back and got inducted into the Forever Fulham Hall of Fame, so that was fantastic. I just posted actually on social media today, because I watched in the first leg of that playoff semi-final against Cardiff, where they were outstanding. They scored 2 goals that year. Magnificent goals. Scott Parker, my old teammate at Newcastle's, doing a real good top job. It's not over yet. Definitely not. In the playoffs, like I said, in any game, you can't take your eye off the ball. It's going to be a tough second leg, but they've put themselves in a strong position, and I should dearly want them to get promoted back to the Premier League. 1, for Scott, he's a good guy, he's a terrific guy, in fact, and 2, for the club. I got a real love for the club. And I want to see them competing in the Premier League again. And I think under Scott's stewardship, if he got them back there, and he was there from the first day, because I know he took over for a few of the last games in the last Premier League campaign when it went down. But that wasn't his group of players. He's got his group of players. He'll strengthen with his signings if they do. And I think he'll give them a real good opportunity to build and be strong. But obviously they've got the second leg, and then the potential of the final, which is not going to be easy. It could be a West London derby in the final against a very impressive Brentford, but it could be Swansea also. So, no, I'm just looking forward to the next couple of weeks, and hopefully they can get back where we all want them to be.
Take their place, hopefully, fingers crossed, and without Geordie Peep putting the mockers on them. I saw an interesting stat this morning, though, that clubs that have scored 2 goals away in the first leg, very rarely is it overturned. But as you say, there's still a lot to play for, and of course the final, which makes the Championship just that really, really one of the toughest leagues in the world to get out of, doesn't it? With all of those games, and then of course all back down into 3 or 4 games in the playoffs.
It's absolutely phenomenal, the league. It's non-stop. It's Saturday, Tuesday. Everyone can beat everyone. And then if you don't get those top 2 places, you're in it is a lottery of the playoffs, because it's just cup football. You could be the form team that finishes 3rd, maybe lose out on a promotion, automatic spot on goal difference. You go into the playoffs and you mightn't even make the final. Because the pressure is so intense on the teams that are wanting to get up. because they know the riches that they get if they get to the Premier League. And it's obviously comes from the top with the owners. You know, they back their managers with financial clout, but obviously that, you know, filters down to the manager and the players. And it's the team that can hold their nerve as well. That playoff final isn't just about the best team, it's about players holding their nerve and being the calmest, because everyone knows what at stake. The players want to play in the Premier League. It's the best league in the world. The finances that come for the players with that are huge, but also the finances that come to the clubs are just phenomenal. So that the pressures are on. So, you know, that you've got to take that into account when these teams are competing in that game. It's not just, you can never class it. You try to, you would always try to go in the game and just treat it as any normal game. But the financial implications, if you win, are just unbelievable. And if you lose because you've lost out on that potential windfall, and some of the clubs in the Championship would set them up for the next 10, 20 years, that type of money. So you've got to take what all into account of what's going on. But it's just an absolute ruthless league, and one that, you know, I still enjoy watching. I watch it as often as I watch the Premier League games, because you know it's going to be competitive. You take the example of the last game of the season when Swansea got into the playoffs in place of Forest. There was you know, the goal difference in terms of that, when Forest lost 4-1 at home and Swansea won 4-1 away. For that to change around like that just shows you the excitement. And that was another opportunity to reiterate about never giving up, because Swansea never gave up and they kept going. And who would have predicted those type of score lines for Swansea to nick that last place?
And also, as well, you say about the Championship final, it's from a fan's perspective, it's absolutely incredible. Some of the best games. It's, you know, it doesn't matter who you support. You could be a Premier League team or supporting someone in League One or in Scotland. But if you watch that Championship playoff, as a fan, as a neutral, you're going to think, I mustn't miss that, because over the years, it's thrown up so many nail-biting games, lots of goals, lots of excitement. And as you say, it's just down to the sheer pressure. All 46 games come down to 90 minutes.
Absolutely, yeah. And the chance to change your club's fortunes forever in terms of finances, you know, and obviously your career as well as a football player. I would got no doubt every player in English football, whichever level they're playing at, has the aspirations and the dreams to be a Premier League footballer. And you know you're 90 minutes from that potentially happening. So the pressure and that can put on an individual themselves could be, you know, absolutely huge.
As you say, 90 minutes. Well, that was your favourite 90 minutes. We hope, Lee, that you can join us again, and maybe you'll be talking about a Newcastle Blue Stars' favourite 90 minutes. Ladies and gents of Hollywood Bulls, the one and only Lee Clark.
Thank you, Pete.